You know, people often say that the deepest pain doesn't come from enemies, it comes from your own blood. I used to believe that love could heal anything. But now, when I look back, I realize love can also be the weapon that breaks you the most. My name's Margaret, though everyone used to call me Maggie. I'm 74 years old now, and there was a time, not long ago, when I lived in my daughter's big, beautiful house in California. It was supposed to be my safe haven after my husband passed away. But instead, it became my prison. Started so small. Few sharp words here and there. Slam door. A sigh when I'd ask for help reaching something on the top shelf. My daughter Clara had always been my pride. Lawyer. Smart, successful, respected. I thought she'd inherited her father's strength, but instead she carried my temper, only sharper, colder. After my husband's funeral, Clara told me, "Mom, you shouldn't be alone. Come live with me. We'll take care of you." And I believed her. I really did. For the first few weeks, things were fine. She'd make coffee for us in the mornings. We'd sit by the big window and talk about her childhood, how she used to braid her doll's hair and beg me for bedtime stories. But slowly, her tone began to change. She'd come home from work irritated, snap at me for leaving a light on, or for cooking something too greasy. She said I was forgetful, messy, old-fashioned. But the day she locked that bathroom door, that was the day everything shattered. It was a Thursday afternoon. I remember because the sunlight was spilling through the curtains in stripes, and I just finished watering the little plants in the bathroom window. Clara came in with her phone glued to her ear, shouting at someone from her office. When she hung up, she turned to me with eyes full of something I couldn't recognize. Rage, or disgust, maybe both. "Mom," she said, "I need you out of the way for a while. You're stressing me out." I laughed, thinking she was joking. But she didn't laugh back. She walked out of the bathroom, and before I could even follow, I heard the click. That awful sound of metal locking from the outside. First, I thought it was an accident. I knocked gently, then harder. "Clara!" No answer. Minutes turned into an hour into half a day. By night I realized she wasn't coming back. The bathroom was small, with no window big enough to crawl through. I tried everything, shouting, banging, even unscrewing the knob with a hairpin. But the door was solid oak. My legs started to tremble from standing too long. I sat on the cold tile floor, hugging myself, whispering her name over and over like a prayer. By the second day I was weak. I drank water from the faucet, but I hadn't eaten. The mirror across from me reflected a woman I could barely recognize. Tired eyes, cracked lips, tears staining the wrinkles on her cheeks. I kept asking myself, what did I do to deserve this? You know, I had once held that same daughter in my arms when she was just a newborn. I stayed awake all night just to make sure she was breathing. And now, she was the one who left me gasping in the dark. Tell me, if your own child ever treated you like a burden, what would you do? Would you forgive them? Or would you walk away forever? Comment below. I really want to know what your heart says. On the second night, I remember hearing music from outside. Clara was having guests over. I could hear laughter, clinking glasses, even her voice pretending to be so perfectly fine. I screamed her name till my throat burned. But no one came. Something inside me broke that night. Not just my trust, but the last piece of hope I had in her. When she finally opened the door the next morning, I could barely stand. I thought she'd rush to me, maybe apologize, maybe cry. But she just looked at me, annoyed. "See," she said coldly. "You're fine. You're too dramatic, Mom. You need to stop acting like a victim." She tossed a piece of bread on the counter and left again. That moment, as I sat there with trembling hands, I realized something so sharp it cut through my soul. My own daughter didn't love me anymore. Not the way a daughter should. Not at all. I spent the rest of that day sitting by the window, staring at the sky, asking God for one sign. Just one, that my life still had meaning. And I swear that night I got it. A small envelope arrived in the mail slot. It was from the lawyer who had handled my husband's estate. And when I opened it, my heart nearly stopped. Because it turned out, the house we lived in wasn't just Clara's. Half of it was still mine. And in that moment, as the moonlight hit the papers in my trembling hands, I made a silent promise to myself that I would never, ever let her treat me like a prisoner again. Not tomorrow. Not ever. That night I started planning my escape. You know, I never thought a mother could reach a point where she'd have to hide from her own child. But after that day, after those 2 long nights locked in that bathroom, something inside me changed forever. I didn't scream anymore. I didn't cry. I just watched, listened, waited. Clara thought I'd gone quiet because I was guilty, that maybe I'd realized I was the problem. But the truth was, I'd finally stopped hoping she'd love me again. I wasn't her mother anymore in her eyes. I was just an old shadow taking up space. So I did what I had to do. I started planning. Began small. I started collecting things she wouldn't notice missing. The spare keys, the lawyer's letters, the bank statements she never bothered to open. Every night when she'd fall asleep, I'd tiptoe into the living room and open the bottom drawer of her desk. My hands would shake, my heart pounding so hard I was sure it would wake her. But I kept going. You see, I wasn't planning to confront her. I wasn't even planning to argue. I was planning to vanish. I discovered something shocking. Clara had never changed the ownership of the house after my husband died. My name was still on the deed. 50%. That meant she couldn't sell it, rent it, or legally throw me out without my consent. For the first time in years, the power was quietly in my hands. I remember the morning I first called the lawyer. His name was Mr. Jacobs, an older gentleman who'd known my husband for decades. He was surprised to hear from me. "Mrs. Thompson," he said softly, "I haven't heard your voice in so long. What can I do for you?" I hesitated. I didn't want to sound like a bitter old woman seeking revenge. But I told him the truth, that Clara had locked me away, that I wanted to sell my share of the house. There was a long silence on the other end. Then he said, "You have every legal right to do that, Margaret. Every single right." That night, I sat in the dark living room, whispering my plan out loud like a prayer. "I'm leaving, Henry," I said, talking to my late husband. "You'd want me to stand up for myself, wouldn't you?" And somehow I felt him there, the warmth of him in the silence, like a quiet nod from heaven. From that day forward I lived 2 lives. In front of Clara, I was the quiet, obedient mother. I smiled when she scolded me. I said thank you when she gave me leftovers. I even apologized for being a burden. But behind that smile, I was preparing for my freedom. Every morning when she'd leave for work, I'd make small calls. One to the lawyer, one to a realtor, one to a travel agent. I told them I wanted everything handled discreetly. No noise. No mail sent to the house. No contact number that could trace back to Clara. I told them I wanted a one-way ticket. But freedom always comes with fear. Every time I heard Clara's car pull into the driveway, I'd shove my papers under the couch cushion, my heart leaping to my throat. Sometimes she'd barge into my room and scan my things, suspicious. "What are you hiding, Mom?" she'd ask. And I'd smile, shaking my head. "Just old letters from your father, darling." That word, darling, tasted bitter on my tongue. One evening she brought home her boyfriend, Ethan, a man with eyes too slick and a laugh too fake. He looked at me like I was invisible. I overheard them arguing in the kitchen. "Your mom's losing it, Clara. You need to put her in a home before she ruins your peace." And Clara, she didn't even defend me. She just sighed and said, "I know. I'm working on it." That night I couldn't sleep. I sat by the window and watched the streetlights flicker. I thought about all the years I'd spent raising her alone after her father died. The sleepless nights, the cold dinners waiting for her to come home safe, the way she'd cling to me when she had nightmares. Where had all that love gone? When had it turned to this cruelty? But I didn't let those thoughts drown me. No, I let them fuel me. The next morning I called Mr. Jacobs again. "I've made my decision," I said. "I'm selling my share." Immediately, he hesitated. "Mrs. Thompson, are you sure? This will shock your daughter." I smiled through tears. Good. Maybe she'll finally feel something. We arranged everything in secret. Within a week, half the ownership papers were transferred to a buyer, an investor who didn't even want to move in, just to purchase the share quietly. And once that was done, I received the wire transfer. My name, Margaret Thompson, suddenly had more money than I'd ever imagined holding again. Enough to start over. But I didn't spend a single dollar yet. I waited. I needed the perfect moment. Then one Friday evening, Clara stormed into the house shouting about her job, about her bills, about me. She threw her purse on the counter and glared. "I can't do this anymore, Mom," she said. "You're sucking the life out of me. You need to move to a home soon." I just nodded. Silent. Because by then I'd already bought my ticket. To Lisbon, Portugal. A place my husband and I always dreamed of visiting but never got the chance to. I spent the next 2 days packing quietly. Just one suitcase. Some photos. Locket. Few clothes. Nothing more. Every movement was slow, careful, like a thief sneaking through her own life. And when the taxi came that night, I left my key on the table with a note. Said only one thing. "You locked me once, Clara. But you'll never lock me again." As the car pulled away, I didn't cry. Not yet. The tears would come later. But for that moment, all I felt was peace. You know, the funny thing about freedom is, it doesn't always feel the way you imagine it will. When I first stepped off that plane in Lisbon, I thought I'd cry with joy. The sky was soft pink, the air smelled of salt and sea, and the sound of the waves echoed like a lullaby. I stood there with my small suitcase and thought, "This is it, Margaret. You're free." But that night, in my little rented room overlooking the city, I didn't feel free. Felt hollow. Because no matter how far you run, you can't outrun the memory of the people you love. Even when they've hurt you. Especially when they've hurt you. I'd wake up in the mornings and reach for the second cup on the table, the one I used to pour for Clara, before remembering there was no one to drink it. The silence was heavy but peaceful. For the first time in years, I didn't have to walk on eggshells. I could leave the lights on. Cook what I wanted. Hum an old song without being told I was annoying. Still, I couldn't help but wonder. Was she looking for me? Was she angry? Hurt? Part of me hoped she was crying, realizing what she'd done. But another part, the mother in me, still wanted her to be okay. I spent my days wandering the narrow cobblestone streets, exploring the markets, sitting by the waterfront watching the ships pass by. I met a kind woman named Teresa, the owner of a small cafe by the river. She had gray curls, kind eyes, and a laugh that filled the room. "You're new here," she said when I first walked in. "Yes," I smiled. "Starting over." She poured me a cup of coffee and said, "Then you've come to the right city. Everyone here is running from something." Her words hit deeper than she probably realized. Within a few weeks, I became a regular at her cafe. I'd help her wipe tables, water her plants, even bake the bread sometimes. The warmth of her friendship began to stitch up the broken pieces of my heart. One afternoon, as the sun spilled gold over the water, she looked at me and said, "You must have loved someone very much to carry that sadness in your eyes." I looked down, twisting my wedding ring. "Yes," I said softly. "I loved my daughter more than my own life." Teresa didn't ask more. She just reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Then you'll heal here," she whispered. And for a while I believed her. Weeks turned into months. I started painting again, something I hadn't done in years. Little scenes of the ocean, the markets, the sunsets. I even started laughing again. But then, one evening while I was closing the shutters, I heard my phone buzz. It was an email. From Clara Thompson. Subject, "You ruined everything." My heart dropped. I hadn't heard from her since I left. My hands trembled as I opened it. Her message was short. Only a few sentences. "I know what you did. You sold the house behind my back. You humiliated me. How could you, Mom? After everything I did for you." She ended it with, "Don't bother replying. I never want to see you again." I sat there, staring at the glowing screen in the dark, my chest tightening with a pain I can't even describe. I didn't cry at first. I just sat still, numb, feeling like the world had turned upside down. Then slowly the tears came. Because even after everything she'd done, I had hoped that somewhere deep down she might understand. But she didn't. She saw it as betrayal, not survival. I closed the laptop, walked outside, and sat on a bench overlooking the sea. The waves crashed softly against the rocks, the air cool and tender. I whispered into the wind. I didn't do it to hurt you, Clara. I did it to save myself. That night I couldn't sleep. Every creak in the apartment sounded like footsteps. Every whisper of wind felt like her voice calling my name. I started to wonder. Would she try to find me? Would she come here? Days passed and I received another message. This time from Mr. Jacobs, my lawyer. Margaret, your daughter has contested the sale. She's furious. She's demanding your location. I haven't told her anything, but please be careful. Be careful. Those words sent chills through me. I started checking the locks every night, watching every stranger who lingered too long near the building. I even changed my SIM card and stopped using my real name at the cafe. But despite all the fear, I refused to go back. Because I had finally found something I hadn't felt in years. Dignity. One evening, Teresa came over with dinner. She found me sitting by the window, staring at the stars. Margaret, she said gently, you look haunted. What's wrong? I hesitated. Then I told her everything. Every single thing. From the day Clara locked me in that bathroom, to the moment I walked away forever. When I finished, Teresa had tears in her eyes. My God, she whispered. You must have felt so alone. I did, I admitted softly. But now, feel something else. Feel free. Even if my heart aches every night, I know I did the right thing. She hugged me, and for the first time in years, I felt the warmth of a mother's love. Except this time, I was the one being comforted. As the months passed, I began to rebuild my life piece by piece. I started selling my paintings at the market, and tourists would stop by to talk. Some even said my art felt like healing. I smiled when they said that, because that's what it was. Healing. But sometimes late at night I'd still check my inbox, hoping for one more message. Something softer. Something like, I'm sorry, Mom. But it never came. And though it broke my heart, I realized something important. Sometimes peace doesn't come when others forgive you. Comes when you forgive yourself. It had been 3 years since I left America. 3 long, quiet, healing years. Lisbon had become my sanctuary, the place where I found myself again. I had grown used to the rhythm of the waves, the laughter of the street musicians, and the gentle chatter of strangers who had no idea who I was or what I had survived. I was no longer Clara's mother. I was simply Margaret, the old lady who painted sunsets by the sea. My little apartment was filled with light and color, canvases stacked by the wall, brushes resting in jars, the smell of oil paint always lingering in the air. Each painting told a piece of my story, the pain, the loss, the peace. People often told me, your art feels like forgiveness. And maybe it was. I had forgiven life, forgiven time, even forgiven myself. But there was one person I still couldn't forgive, and yet, I still missed her every single day. Every morning I'd walk to the market and pass a small flower stand. The woman who ran it, Ines, always saved me white lilies. She'd smile and say, for your daughter, yes? And I'd nod, whispering, always for her. I'd place those lilies in a vase by the window, right beside the only picture I still had of Clara, the one from her college graduation, her arms around me, both of us smiling like the world would never fall apart. But life has a cruel way of circling back when you least expect it. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the rooftops, I heard a knock at the door. At first I thought it was Teresa. She often brought me pastries at sunset. But when I opened the door, my breath caught in my throat. It was Clara. Her hair was shorter now, her eyes tired, her face thinner. But I'd know her anywhere. She stood there in silence for a long time, her hands trembling, her lips pressed tight as if holding back a storm of words. I didn't speak. Couldn't. My body froze, half from shock, half from fear. Finally she whispered, "Hi, Mom." Her voice broke something inside me. I stepped aside slowly and she walked in. Her eyes scanned the room, the paintings, the flowers, the sea beyond the window. She looked lost. "I had to find you," she said softly. "I went to the lawyer. He wouldn't tell me, but I found one of your letters in the old mailbox. I just needed to see you." I didn't know whether to cry or run to her. But before I could speak, she blurted out, "I hated you for selling the house. I really did. I thought you betrayed me. But then..." She stopped, her voice trembling. "Then I found your diary, Mom. The one you kept hidden behind the mirror." My heart stopped. That diary, the one I'd written everything in. Pain, the fear, the truth. She looked down at her hands. "I read it all. What I did to you. Bathroom. The way I spoke to you. I don't even know who I was back then. I was angry, tired, drowning in work. But none of that excuses what I did." Tears filled her eyes as she whispered, "I'm sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry." I couldn't breathe for a moment. My mind replayed every scream, every cruel word, every second locked behind that door. And yet, seeing her there, broken, human, crying, my heart softened like it always had for her. I walked closer, my voice trembling. "You locked me away, Clara. You made me feel like I didn't matter. But you were my whole world." She nodded, sobbing. "I know. And I'll never forgive myself for it." For a long time we just stood there, two women bound by blood and heartbreak. Then I did something I never thought I could do again. I reached out and pulled her into my arms. She gasped softly, and then she held me, really held me, like a little girl again. Her tears soaked my shoulder, and mine fell into her hair. We didn't speak. We didn't need to. Sometimes silence says everything words can't. After what felt like hours, we sat by the window, watching the ocean together. The city lights flickered like tiny stars below us. "Why Lisbon?" she asked softly. "Because your father and I always dreamed of coming here," I smiled faintly. "And because it was far enough to remember who I am." She looked down. "Do you hate me, Mom?" I shook my head. "No, Clara. I could never hate you. You're my daughter." But I learned something. Love doesn't mean letting someone hurt you over and over. Sometimes love means walking away until they learn how to hold you gently again. She nodded slowly, her eyes glistening. We spent the next few days together. Quiet, rebuilding what had been broken. She helped me cook, visited Teresa's cafe, even bought one of my paintings to hang in her new apartment. And when it was time for her to go, she hugged me tight. "Will I see you again?" she asked. "Whenever you need me," I whispered. "But promise me something. Anything. Never let anger build walls, Clara. It always costs more than it gives." She smiled faintly, kissed my forehead, and walked away into the Lisbon evening. I watched her disappear down the street, her figure small against the glowing sunset. And for the first time in years I felt truly at peace. Because I knew, even if life never gave us back what we lost, we had found forgiveness. She turned softly to the audience, her silver hair glowing in the warm light, voice calm and full of wisdom. "You know, my dear ones, life isn't about what people do to you. It's about what you do after. You can choose bitterness or you can choose peace." Chose peace. And maybe that's the real freedom. Tell me, if you were in my place, would you forgive? Or would you walk away forever? Let me know in the comments. I want to hear your heart.